I found that flaring is another effective compound anti-personnel and anti-environmental weapon used for soft kill and A2AD. Before I describe what flaring does to the environment and why I think it's being employed as a weapon of mass destruction, I'd like to quickly go over why it's normally used. When petroleum is extracted from a well, whether it be conventional oil drilling or hydraulic fracturing, natural gas surfaces along with it. Some of this natural gas is considered unprofitable or an immediate hazard that requires a conversion to a less toxic compound. To dispose of this natural gas, petroleum refineries burn it in combustion chambers called flare stacks that can be land or sea-based. Flaring emits mostly the greenhouse gas methane with some nitrogen oxides, carbon dioxide, and carbon monoxide. It can also release these chemicals into the atmosphere: naphthalene, benzene, hydrogen sulfide, formaldehyde, ethene, acetaldehyde, sulfur dioxide, xylenes, benzoapyrene, toluene, ethylbenzene, hexene, radon, black carbon, and other substances. In addition to chemicals, flare stacks discharge heat, noise, and bright lights, so there's that potential for a stealth compound weapon. Some nations that are known to flare include Venezuela, Ecuador, Algeria, America, England, Nigeria, the Russian Federation, Canada, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Iran, and Iraq. In 2020, some of the top flaring countries were the Russian Federation, America, Venezuela, Nigeria, Algeria, Iran, and Iraq. Some states in America that flare include Alaska, Louisiana, Wyoming, Colorado, Montana, Utah, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Kansas, with North Dakota, Texas, and New Mexico flaring the most. Before we observe the properties of these toxic industrial chemicals, I'd like to explain why most flaring is unnecessary. There are two types of flaring. There's safety maintenance flaring that's used during startup, shutdown, maintenance, testing, and emergencies to prevent explosions caused by excessively pressurized equipment. This flaring releases small volumes of toxic fumes for short periods. Then there is routine flaring. That is the disposal of large amounts of natural gas because it is unwanted, perhaps unprofitable. This unnecessary flaring is wasteful and extremely harmful to the environment. Furthermore, the natural gas released from a well can be converted to a non-toxic version, sold and used as a source of energy. Although it can be cheaper to flare than convert, there are reasonable and cost-friendly methods for energy corporations to reduce excessive flaring. Yet, flaring continues, and in some places, like the US, it's increasing. So flaring persists when it is environmentally wasteful. Besides cost saving, is there another motive for routine flaring? I ask, what purpose does excessive and unnecessary routine flaring serve? From my perspective, I suspect that the anti-personnel and anti-environmental effects of flaring compose the bulk of the reason. In the Modern Ecological Warfare chapter, we learned that burning petroleum has polluted the environment, specifically the air, vegetation, and water supplies. A valid link was made between that and weaponized natural gas flaring. We also discovered that the UK's RAMC recognized that ticks, including fumes from ignited chemicals, could be used as part of a clandestine weapons program, and that FEMA described how toxic vapors in general could be deliberately released from industrial infrastructure to attack downwind communities. Starting in March of 2022, reports appeared in Science Daily, Journal of Public Economics, and other media that included data regarding how far pollution could travel from a flare stack. Researchers who studied the health effects of flaring in North Dakota between 2007 and 2015 found that flare stacks situated upwind from a community could induce respiratory problems in people up to 60 miles away. The poisons that flaring emits into the environment have been linked to serious health complications, including various types of cancer, anemia, neurological impairment, lung damage, birth deformities, and reproductive problems. Flaring also damages the water, soil, and air with acid rain and other toxic chemicals, while releasing greenhouse gases that ruin the ozone layer. Let's have a closer look at some of the chemicals that flaring discharges, then we'll examine its horrific environmental and human impact. Hydrogen sulfide is a colorless, corrosive gas that's extremely toxic, causing health problems even at low levels. Inhaling certain quantities of hydrogen sulfide will result in death, possibly in minutes. This potential makeshift CBRNE agent will also be mentioned in the next chapter on fracking. As we saw in the chapter on crude oil, benzene and benzoapyrene are cancer-inducing human carcinogens. The tick benzene will also induce a host of devastating health problems, while the neurotoxin benzoapyrene sabotages the brain, DNA, and reproductive systems. Radon is a radiological chemical that is confirmed to induce lung cancer. Toluene. The tick toluene causes brain damage and dementia. Toluene injures the central nervous system, induces spontaneous abortions, and thwarts the physical growth of children. Formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is another tick that causes cancer in lab animals and is suspected of provoking cancer in humans. Hexene. Hexene impairs reproduction, damages the nervous system, irritates the throat and lungs, and may cause death. Black carbon has been known to induce death by heart disease. Naphthalene damages the liver, brain, and eyes, and is thought to evoke cancer. In summary, flaring induces brain damage, liver and heart disease, and several types of cancer, in addition to wrecking DNA, causing birth defects, spontaneous abortions, and sabotage of reproductive systems. Flaring certainly appears to be another potent stealth anti-personnel weapon suitable for soft-kill depopulation. So we've just covered the biological effects of flaring that I've determined are the result of a planned anti-personnel or soft-kill campaign. Now let's observe some of the anti-environmental or ecocidal effects that appear to serve the A2AD biosphere disintegration agenda. In addition to the other deadly substances being released into the environment, flaring sabotages the air, soil, and water with acid. The two flaring emissions that primarily create acid rain are nitrogen oxides and sulfur dioxide. In the atmosphere, they combine with moisture to form nitric and sulfuric acids that create acid rain. Acid rain alone wreaks havoc on plants and animal life. It acidifies water reservoirs and soil, damaging existing vegetation, and disrupts pH balance so that vegetation is less nutritious or can't grow at all. Besides the acid rain, the toxic industrial chemicals listed at the start of this chapter are also dispersed into the environment. Once the chemicals are released into the air, they end up in the water supply and soil, where they poison the food chain. So this is food chain subversion. There's two kinds of air pollution caused by flaring: the deadly chemicals and revolting stench. Then there's the light and noise pollution. Okay, so just a quick review of what we've learned so far in regard to flaring's environmental degradation. Flaring contaminates the air, soil, water, plant, and animal life. In addition to the chemical air pollution, there's the foul stench. Plus, in the area surrounding the flare stack, there is light and noise pollution. Flaring ordinarily causes debilitating medical conditions to the people around the flare stack. The flaring process is typically noisy and visible to residents. This combination of chemical and audiovisual irritants is said to immobilize surrounding communities. Large areas around the flare stacks are rendered off limits due to contamination and audiovisual disturbance. So, putting this all together, with flaring, we have bad smells, heat, toxic industrial fumes that permeate the area, bright lights, and noise. All of these irritants are emitted from the same flare stack. This array of audio, visual, and chemical pollution makes a vast area surrounding the flare stack uninhabitable and usually afflicts the local community with harsh medical conditions. It's evident to me that flaring has been weaponized. Here's my take on flaring used for ecological warfare. Flare stacks have been employed as clandestine dispersal devices, or platforms, as they're called in military literature. These platforms host multiple stealth weapons, including a weapon of mass destruction. These compound weapons systems are placed strategically in or near populated areas to agitate targeted communities with recurrent audiovisual stress and purposefully contaminate the environment with toxic industrial chemicals, presumably for soft kill depopulation and anti-access area denial.